Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this week I had a pretty big haul with 17 comics, so ready to get into those. But of course, before we get into the show, be sure to leave your pick of the week for the week, because at the end of the episode, I talk about the viewer's pick of the week. But let's get started. Number 17 for me this week was Batman Catwoman issue 3. So this book, I've given it the 3-issue try here. And I haven't been able to get into it. You know, I've read all Tom King's Batman, which is really why I wanted to try this out. And like I said, give it a real fair shot. But I feel like the book is very chopped up. And the things that were interesting is just not being fully fleshed out enough for me to pick up every issue and to continue this series. And that's Phantasm. Obviously, that was the big part. I wanted to learn more about Catwoman and Batman's daughter. And we actually get a glimpse of her here. We get a story with her, but it's just not enough for me to want to pick up more, especially because I didn't think they really did much with the daughter. It's all very, I want to say, mysterious of what's actually going on in the book, and because there's so many different timelines, it makes it all feel unlinear, honestly. So just wasn't a fan of it, and probably gonna drop this book after this issue. So moving on to number 16, and that is Marauders issue 18. Marauders, I'm just not liking the arc overall. You know, I want to see more of Kitty. I want to see more of Emma. And, you know, they show up in this issue, but it's more about Madripoor and a little bit more of the political side of the X-Men and, you know, showcasing characters I'm just not as invested in. So that's why it's lower. It wasn't a bad issue. There's actually an interesting mention, Mora in this issue, and we haven't seen her in a while. So that was kind of interesting to get a statue. I hope we do get a story with her because she was such a big part of Power of X or Power of 10 and House of X. So I hope that's just a teaser of what's to come. I also love this artist the most on this series. I really feel like the artwork was pretty crisp for it. But this story is concluding next issue, it seems like, with the title at the end. So I'm interested to see where the series will go after the story arc. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 16. Moving on to number 15, and you know we're dwindling down with the Future State titles, and that is Future State Shazam. I think I got like 3 Future State titles this week, and obviously February the Future State titles are gonna end, so it's interesting to see. Like, I got every single issue to see which ones I stayed on my pull list, and I enjoyed Shazam. I really enjoyed the first issue of Shazam, I should say, and the second issue wasn't bad. You know, after all this, all my books are pretty solid. So, yeah, with Shazam, it just wasn't as interesting as that first issue. The revelation that Billy and Captain Marvel / Shazam are not the same person was really interesting, and the piggyback off of that in this issue, they leave a lot open-ended that maybe a 2-issue arc wouldn't have been able to deal with, and then by the end they're like, well, if you want to find out more, read Black Adam, and I'm like, well, I'm not reading Black Adam, and Black Adam's not even in this comic, so I want to read more about Shazam. I want to read more about that character. Hopefully Teen Titans Academy will get a little bit more of the character and maybe these plot threads, but that's the thing with Future State, is some of these stories, like the ones even you enjoyed, you don't really know how that's gonna connect in the future. Artwork was pretty solid though, and I still enjoyed the moments of everyone figuring out what's been going on with Shazam, so that was pretty cool. So giving that 3 stars, not a bad one, but just a little bit of a simmer for a conclusion there. So moving on to number 14, which is Power Rangers issue 4. And overall, this was an okay issue. It's just a little bit of a slower one, as we get to see a bit actually more of a character-driven issue where we get to see the Rangers go into this kind of Elseworld version of their hometown, and it is very destroyed. And it was kind of interesting to see Lord Draken's point of view of that town and how he's connected to it. So I like that. There's not huge plot movements here, and the ending didn't do as much for me as maybe other Power Rangers fans, I guess, just because it was more connected to the alien side of things. But overall, I enjoyed the character beats here, but I do think the last arc was a bit stronger for the rest of the cast. This is really more of a reactionary issue for a Lord Draken story, which is kind of cool to see Lord Draken definitely be more human, and because he was not in a bad way, but he was a mustache twirling villain, kind of untouchable in the previous arcs, the bigger arcs for Power Rangers. So it's cool to see him being grounded, and I'm curious to see where that's going to go. So giving that 3 stars. Artwork is pretty solid, very anime-ish in this arc compared to the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers book, but I like it. I think it gives it a good vibe. So like I said, giving that 3 stars, and that was number 14. So moving on to number 13, which is Cable issue 8, and this is just a fun issue, but I also don't know what direction this book's going in, and that's kind of my issue with Cable. It continues to deal with this baby snatching story line, which has been going on since issue 2, I believe, and we're continuing that. The reason this is a little, I guess, higher is because Domino and Cable was a lot of fun. You know, I enjoyed the explanation of her powers was cool, but the one-offs, it's a little hard to follow with, I guess all the X-Men titles are kind of been doing that. It's not just a Cable thing. X-Men, the main series has actually been doing it a lot, where it's like, okay, what is the overall arc? I see a lot of little pieces, but I'm sure those little pieces will come together. But do I want the baby snatching arc for this whole entire series? I don't know. And then even the adult Cable thing feels so disconnected, so the cliffhanger didn't hit as hard as it could have. But the artwork is to die for in this book, and like I said, I like the slower character moments in this one. So I'm giving that 3.5 stars, and that was number 13. Moving on to number 12, I've been getting a lot of these one-shots overall, and that is the Immortal Hulk issue. I was going to say issue 1, but it is issue 1. Flatline is the book. So the Immortal Hulk, you know, like I said, I've been getting a lot of the one-shots, and I've enjoyed all of them. And I like seeing different writers, different artists have a different take on Hulk, and especially the Immortal Hulk, as Al Ewing's been spearheading the regular series. So I enjoyed seeing a new take, and I like the more emotional, character-driven storyline here, where we get to see someone from Bruce's past come back, and we get an interesting twist of how she's connected to the gamma rays and gamma radiation. You know, I don't know if this needed to be as long as it was. I do think there were some slower parts here, but I like the overall story, and I like that this was a Bruce story, because Immortal Hulk has been so focused on the Hulks and the kind of bigger mythology. It's cool to see the character grounded a bit, and that's what these one-shots have had the opportunity to do. And in the back it says we're going to get more one-shots, and I'll definitely follow them and see what takes they have on the character. Or even if you know, one thing I loved was the Immortal She-Hulk. Hopefully we get to see other characters get these one-shots as well. I would love to see one with Betty, because I feel like it's been a while since we've seen Betty, so that'd be kind of cool. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 12. Artwork was really great too, especially because it's the same artist that was the writer and the artist for the book, so you can really feel the cohesiveness of it, and definitely the emotions of it as well. So moving on to number 11, which is Sabrina the Teenage Witch, issue 5, which is the last issue of this second volume of Kelly Thompson and Veronica Fish's run on Sabrina, which has been a lot of fun. It's one of those books where it's nice to kind of have a lighter, more slice of life story as you're reading King in Black and Future State. It's nice a nice palate cleanser. And issue 5 does not disappoint in that. And honestly, very good movement for plot as well. We get a little bit more from the love triangle and Sabrina actually being a witch. So we get to see a pretty big final blow, a final battle between Sabrina and the villain, and learn a little bit more about the Wendigo characters, the sister and her potential, I guess, also love interest that's going on right now, because we didn't see Harvey in this issue, so we don't really know where that stands. But also, it does end on a cliffhanger, and we haven't had the announced next volume, and Archie, the main series, hasn't been coming out. So I'm curious when's the next chapter of Sabrina. I'm guessing these have been in the hole from before COVID, or at least close to it. So that's why we got these issues. But how long is it going to be until we get the next volume? Because the cliffhanger is that Sabrina might be going to a witch school. At least she's invited to go there. And will she leave her mortal life behind? Kind of similar to, I'm guessing, the TV show. I've only seen the pilot of the TV show, but from what I've seen of the show, it's similar to the show. And I really like the marriage of this comic being able to give comic fans what they want, the sitcom fans what they want, and the Chilling Adventure fans what they want. And overall, like I said, a really fun, character-driven, action-y issue, and I hope we get that third volume sooner than later with the same creative team. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Stillwater, issue 6. This is a point A to point B issue, and also a little bit diverging from our main story. So we learn a bit about this character who works for the police station, and he used to be a Marine, and how he's connected to all that. He does seem like he's connected to the revolutionaries, characters who want to get out of this town and kind of break the rules. And we actually seen he has gone out of this town. He has met with his Marine friends. And his Marine friends, these outsiders, come into the town after the explosion. So we definitely get a bit before the explosion, and then by the end of the issue, we get to the end of the issue of the last issue, which was the explosion. And again, the outsider take was really interesting, and learning more about the citizens and other characters was cool. I do think it was a little of a slower issue, because again, you have that explosion, you want to see what happens next, but I think it was a necessary issue to build up even more drama and stakes for the book. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, another indie book, and this is the penultimate issue of this indie book, and that is Family Tree, issue 11. I will say this story kind of slowed down for me until the cliffhanger, because I'm like, okay, well, where are we leading towards? You know, we know the world's ended. Is it because of the trees and, you know, the thematics of, you know, nature versus technology versus humans, and that's always been interesting. And this one, it definitely comes to a head as we learn that Meg has died. So because of our main character kind of screwing up and wanting to save his mom, which is not a bad thing, but he leaves his family, leaves Meg, and Meg gets burned down, and that is why the world is where it's at in the beginning of the series. So I'm very excited to see how this concludes. It takes a while to get to that point as the Meg cliffhanger happens, and that's why this is a little lower and kind of in the middle of the list, but very interesting movement, and I'm really excited to see how this one ends. Artwork is always really great and kind of earthy, as I always say, which really fits well for a book about trees and family. Definitely pick this one up if you haven't been reading Family Tree, and I guess it would be good in collection because it's, again, 12 issues, and this is the penultimate issue. So giving that one 3.5 stars, and that is number 10, I believe. Let's see. That was number 9. So we're moving on to number 8. I love this cover, and that is Future State Nightwing, issue 2. One of the stronger Future State titles for me, and most consistent. And this issue doesn't disappoint of why I like that original series, is how is the Bat family, how are the people we care about, the heroes we care about, dealing with losing Batman and the Magistrate and the Peacekeepers and all that fun jazz. And also, something that I don't think Dark Detective delivered on last week, we actually do get to see next Batman and Nightwing interacting and seeing their personalities bounce off each other, and that's a big part of the issue, which I enjoyed. I also love seeing the rest of the Bat family. We get to see Oracle in a new costume, we get to see all these other characters, and they're just fighting for their lives, and Nightwing realizes he can't do this alone, and it ties into his character arc pretty nicely. The only reason this is a little lower is that I don't really care about the Peacekeepers, I don't care about the Magistrate, and they do take a little time of exposition to talk about them, and there's, you know, back and forth between the villains, which I wasn't as invested in, but I still enjoyed this story. Artwork by Nicola Scott is gorgeous. Obviously, she knows how to draw Nightwing, and it's definitely one of the best artwork for Future State by far, and a really solid series. So if you want to read any of the Future State books, I feel like Nightwing did a good job in its first issue and its second issue. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7, which is Iron Man issue 6. A little bit of a slower issue, but I don't blame it because a lot has happened in the previous issues. But Iron Man's neck is broken, and he needs to survive, and there's some really interesting character beats with him in this issue, where obviously he's abstaining from drinking, and that means he's abstaining from anything that could be addicting, and that is drugs. But to survive here, he needs to take drugs to literally survive. So I'm curious to see where that's gonna take him, and Iron Man brings a point of that as well. And then Patsy, in contrast, but definitely going through a similar thing, where she's maybe conflicted of the villain's idea. She's kind of mesmerized by it. She's like, you know, I've gone through hell, literally, and I just want to be happy. I just want to be in a beautiful place. I want to find bliss. So it's interesting that they both want to find bliss in different ways, and she almost wants to go there. She almost wants to kind of give in to the villain who's kind of taken over her body. What slows this issue down a little bit are the other characters, so we have to figure out what's happened with Misty Knight and the rest of the crew, which I like them, but I kind of wanted to go back to the more emotional, poignant moments between Patsy and Iron Man, which was really well developed here. And then War Machine shows up, which was cool. So we do get to see War Machine. He's here, and I'm sure going to play a big part. So overall, a pretty good point A to point B issue. Artwork is so good for this book. I love Capu's work. Really makes this feel like a flagship book, as Iron Man deserves to be, and obviously the writing does that as well. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Spider-Woman issue 9. And this is a really solid issue. And I was a little worried because I was starting to get a little tired of this clone stuff. I'm definitely not as interested in the disease aspect of it all. But I love the family stuff and how the disease and the serum stuff connects to family. And this issue does a really good job at that, where we get to see Octavia, the villain slash friend here, even though it's not really Jessica's friend, how she relates to her daughter and how the daughter is connected to these clone stuff and how it connects to Jessica's mother. So that was really cool. A little expositionary, but really interesting information. And then what really brought this to the top was the cliffhanger, because Carla is so good at cliffhangers with this book. We get to see Octavia kill her own daughter and break her neck. After all those emotional moments, after we learn about their connection, she's dead. And you're like, oh my god, she's not playing with this issue. So I thought it was really solid. I'm enjoying the story, and definitely a lot of great beats in this issue. So giving that 4 stars. Artwork was pretty good. I don't know if it was just my copy though. Some of the pages, and I feel like it was more of the print and not the artwork, just didn't feel fully rendered. It looked a little blurry to me. So I don't know if it was just my copy, but there, especially in the beginning, kind of looked a little blurry. So that's a little bit of a nitpick for the artwork, or I guess the printing, honestly. So giving that 4 stars though, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Future State, Next Batman issue 4. This is the last issue of Next Batman. I will give a disclaimer. I actually didn't read the Gotham City Sirens issue 2 story. I just was not invested in that first story. So sorry, didn't read that one. But I obviously read Batgirls, and I read the Next Batman. And Next Batman was pretty solid. I do think it's still kind of slow, but I do like that we got to see some character beats. I enjoyed the villains for the most part, the parents who end up killing their daughter's murderer. So you have some very conflicting ethical views there, and just seeing Tim in action. I don't know if I really got to see his voice, and that's been really disappointing with this book, but I like seeing him with his family. I liked his conflict with his mother, so there's at least a little peek behind the curtain here that I hope in the next series we get a little bit more of. Artwork was also really solid for that book as well. Now the reason this is so high, Batgirls. I love Batgirls so much, and I wish it was its own book, but I really feel like the pacing was so well done for it, and the character work was done well, and that's how you do a Future State book. You know, you only have 2 issues to really tell this action-packed story, and it was really tight, and it told a beginning, middle, and end, and it didn't just leave us off, be like, oh, well, you gotta read 2 years from now this story. So I like that. I really enjoyed how complete it felt, and Cassandra's voice was so well done, and honestly, it was the teamwork between Cassandra and Spoiler, even though they weren't physically with each other, just the way they worked together was so nice, and we don't get to see it as often as we should. And then them saving Batgirl slash Barbara Gordon was really a nice part of the story, and then just like figuring out their friendship after betrayal, and where they kind of land there. And I really like the honest, open conversation about that. Artwork is also really good. I like Cassandra's new style. I like Spoiler's new style. I like that they actually got into costume towards the end of the issue with like their technology, so that was cool as well. So I really enjoyed that one, and that is the reason why it's number 5. So giving that 4 stars, and like I said, that's number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is King in Black issue 4. A lot happens in this issue, and I was pleasantly surprised. This is, I believe, the penultimate issue of the book, and not just for Venom fans. What I've really been liking about this event is that it all feels very connected. We had the Fantastic Four on one side, you got Jean Grey on another side, and everyone's working together. But there's some big moments in this one where we actually get to see the weapon against Null. What is going to defeat Null is light. I forget what they actually call it, but the god of light, let's say. And it comes from Silver Surfer and goes to Eddie Brock. So we know Eddie Brock is going to be the main guy to fight Null, which obviously makes sense, as this whole event has spinned off of Venom. And we get some good Dylan scenes as well. So a really good ending, and I'm curious, what does this mean for Eddie? Will he survive his own series, and will this be his kind of epic end or his epic hero moment? So I enjoyed the artwork a lot here. The action and just the beats overall made it really feel like an epic event, which is what you want from a crossover event like King in Black. So I really feel like it succeeded well here. I really enjoyed Jean Grey as well. I thought that she was a cool surprise. So giving this 4 stars, and that is number 4. So moving on to number 3, another Johnny Cates book, and that is Thor issue 12. Man, this opener was really cool. We actually get to see kids dissecting a frog, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool, because we just ended on a morgue scene, so that already was interesting. And then the whole issue is a Throg issue. And that this little frog fighting Donald Blake with Lockjaw. And Jane gets involved as well, and she's trying to figure out, okay, Donald's not a good guy. I gotta try to figure out how to defeat him. Doctor Strange gets involved, and Donald Blake is very surprised to see Valkyrie and Jane Foster and Valkyrie be the same person. Still curious to see if Donald Blake is gonna spare her or not. It seemed like he would by the last issue. Will that be a mistake? But what really got me going with this issue was the ending, the cliffhanger, which was Odin. Odin shows up, and it's Jane who gets Odin. Is like, hey, I don't like Odin. I don't like you, Odin. But I'm here, and we're gonna have to fight. So we're gonna have to fight Donald Blake. So I like just how the Thor family is really being involved in general, and this is not just an Odin son book. It is a Thor family book, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It definitely has picked up for me since Donald Blake has become the villain of the story. And the artwork is so good, and a little gritty too, and it feels indie, and I enjoyed that. So giving that a solid 4 stars, and that is number 3. All right, moving on to number 2, which is Black Widow, issue 5. Man, oh man, we had to wait a while for this issue, but was it worth the wait? For sure, it really was. This was a really emotional issue, where last issue we got to see Black Widow literally witness her family die, and we actually get some good flashbacks to build that emotion, some really, really good inner monologue to build that emotion as well, and then finding out that they're actually alive, but to Black Widow, they're dead because she could never see them. And only Winter Soldier knows that her family is alive and knows where they are. And the artwork is so good, it's actiony, and also the view of Black Widow shifting, where, normally she'd be like, okay, I need revenge. And she's like, no, I have a new mission. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna have revenge, even though that's exactly what I want. It's just such a great character-driven issue, and that's really between the collaboration of Kelly Thompson and Casagrandes. It's just the emotions that seep through the art, from action to the small moments where she's just sinking down and breaking down. It's a really wonderful issue, and I can't wait to see the new direction. Only negative is that we have to wait until April for the next issue. I don't know why we're getting the delays, but I'm very excited to see the new direction. Love the costume too. Love the hood. I thought it worked really well, and yeah, really, really enjoyed this issue, from the supporting cast members to Black Widow herself. So giving that 4.5 stars, and that is number 2. So number 1 for me is Second Coming, Only Begotten Son. And man, I love this book so so much from an emotional standpoint, from a commentary standpoint. And in this issue, it's all about Jesus, this one. And Jesus wants to find his disciples. He's got one disciple. He's like, okay, we got to find others, but no one wants to follow you. And it's also this really interesting commentary about like big churches and how religion has become commercialized, how it's become exactly that. I was going to say, connected to money. But yeah, commercialized. And we get to see that on full force where he goes to this, I don't know, I guess a fair, let's say, of religion. And there's all these different places you could go to. And he tries to get disciples. He tries to talk to the masses and be like, hey, this is how you could change the world. This is how you could follow me. And that begins with change. And then no one wants to hear him. And he's like, get away. I want to go get my icy or whatever, I want to follow religion without following religion. So I thought that was really interesting. And what really got me was the cliffhanger, because throughout the whole issue, we get to see this man who even calls up the service to say, hey, I'm down. I don't want to live life anymore. And what do? I'm looking for help. And then you're like, oh, we'll pay you $90 and you can get help. And by the end of the issue, he's about to jump, and it's Jesus who talks him off the edge. And the way it's done was so beautifully written, and also the idea of Jesus finding his disciples one by one was really interesting. I love the commentary for this book, and every issue, I can't say is a pleasant surprise, because I know I'm going to get a really good issue, but for some reason it always is a pleasant surprise. So really enjoyed this one, and the overall commentary and the emotional beats that came along with it. So giving that one 4.5 stars, and that is my #1 pick. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and definitely in the comments below, let me know what was your pick of the week. And of course, going into the viewer's pick of the week, and that was Power Pack. So you guys had the same issue as me, and here are some comments about that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Definitely follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Go check out my comics like Father Like Daughter and They Call Her Dancer, and every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is Comic Book Weekly, where we discuss our favorite comics and comic book news. Thanks, guys. Bye.